I remember very quickly being like, this is crazy. Probably 95 pounds was crazy squat weight. Maybe it's the way that Ripito wrote the book. I was like, well, he seems like he knows what he's doing, and I'm just going to trust this process that says I can add 5 pounds. So I kept doing that. I remember the first time I deadlifted my own body weight. That was beyond my wildest imaginations of being able to do that. So I wasn't afraid to pick up my children anymore.
Joined today by Andrea Mates. Andrea is a coach at Starting Strength Austin. She is a starting strength coach. She's a former teacher. She's a mom. She's a very pleasant person. We've been wanting to have her on the show because I think it's kind of cool that that Andrea decided to switch careers. You know, kind of mid life, mid professional life. And jump into coaching over teaching. I have a lot of assumptions about why that might be, but figured it'd be cool to have Andrea on the show to tell us herself, and then just to generally tell us about her experience with Starting Strength, what it's like to train and coach at Starting Strength Austin, what the program's done for her. And I'm also kind of curious about you as a coach, because when you think about a fitness coach, a strength coach, and you have a conception in your mind, the person's image that pops into your mind is probably not yours, Andrea, but I think it's kind of cool that you're breaking the mold a bit. And I also think it works great for our target demographic, because Austin is on the younger side in terms of the average member in the gyms, but franchise wide, we're sort of a 40 plus gym. So I imagine coming in and seeing someone like you as a coach is comforting for a lot of people. So let's talk about all that. First, tell us how you decided to become a starting strength coach and why you wanted to do this. And if you need to set that up by telling us your experience with starting strength first, that's fine. So anywhere you want to go.
Sure. And you're probably wrong about why I became a starting strength coach from being a teacher.
So it's not communism.
It's not communism. I actually worked at Chaparral Star Academy. It's this very interesting charter school. And I tell people I don't know that I would work for a different administration. Like, I hear from like my other teacher friends about how they're getting thrown under the bus by their principals. And like, my principal was super supportive. And I'm just like, please don't retire. I'd love to keep working here. So it was a surprise and a big switch to pursue becoming a coach. But so when I started lifting, which was 10 years ago, so 10 years ago, I just celebrated the 10-year thing. There weren't starting strength gyms, but it so radically improved my quality of life. It was on my bucket list to become a starting strength coach, but that was supposed to be when I retired and actually had like the capacity to think about finding my own clients and practicing lifting or coaching lifts. So that was way down the road. But I was a computer science teacher. And when I was probably maybe my fourth or fifth year teaching, the state of Texas changed how it was going to basically education policy. It changed its education policy about computer science. And the downstream effect was that my classes were going to be moved to another teacher in another department. And I could kind of see the writing on the wall that they were going to ask me to teach something else. And I had a really nice gig as a part-time teacher, and the something else was going to put me in a full-time position. And I wasn't ready for that. I still one thing. I've always worked part-time, and it's worked really well for my family for any number of reasons. So I wasn't ready to go full-time. I wasn't ready to change my subject. So we were ready looking at, some kind of career change for me. And that coincided with the Starting Strength Gym's apprenticeship program coming online. So I was a Starting Strength member from the day one when it opened in 2019. So that's while I was teaching. I started hearing about the apprenticeship program, actually not from the coaches, but from startingstrength.com. Like, oh, there's this apprenticeship program. And so I asked, I said, would I be someone that could become an apprentice? And they said, oh, yeah, which was very nice of them.
Well, you're smart.
So,
you like smart people.
So I started So I started the apprenticeship program. What that solves is that problem of where to find lifters. I was in a situation, my apprenticing schedule let me see 20 or 30 different lifters a week. And, in retirement, there was no way I was going to find a roster of 20 or 30 different lifters to see multiple times a week and, work on their lifts and program for them. Like that's just completely, like I literally can't wrap my head around that being a possibility. But the apprenticeship program, was like, wow, this is a streamlined process. I can practice. Not only can I practice, I can practice with Starting Strength coaches, looking over my shoulder, giving me feedback, all those things lined up. There's the Texas education policy change. I was already lifting at so Starting Strength Austin existed. It did not exist when I first started lifting. One of those people who read the blue book and went and got a gym membership. The only requirement for that gym membership is that it had childcare because I had toddlers at the time. Terrible squat rack right up against mirrors, barely enough room to put plates on the bar, but you can get strong in really awkward situations. So Starting Strength Gym started to exist, and the first one was in Austin, and the apprenticeship program started up right about the time that I was thinking, hey, what's next? So
is that how your life
had
normally
nothing
works?
to do
where
with
things just fall into place like that naturally, or is this an exception?
Well, really weird things fall into place. So my actual background is I'm a linguist. My kids went to this school and I was just volunteering, and the principal comes down the hall and was like, can I talk to you? I was like, I'm in so much trouble. And instead she was like, would you teach computer science for us next year? And I was like, why do you think I can do this? But so I was talking to my husband. He is a professional programmer, and he was like, well, there are a billion free ways to learn. Why don't you just try picking up a programming language, see whether you even like it? And so I finished one particular online course in like 2 weeks. And I was like, okay, I like this.
Which language?
And Python.
Python.
It's like the beginner language that's really syntax easy.
Yeah, not super low level, high level enough to get stuff done without too much code. Did your background in linguistics help you with learning how to write code?
No, I mean it's so I mostly just thinking systematically is fun. I like that. I like learning new things. So people like to say those who can't do teach.
Yep.
And I will say you don't have an option in computer science, because if you need computer science teachers, you can get people retired from the industry, and schools are starting to set it up so that people who are retiring and don't want to pay thousands of dollars for an education credential, which is a waste of money, can become teachers. Or you end up with people like me that you retrain on the fly to be computer science teachers. So no, I can't program, but I can teach it.
Well, my experience in college as a computer science major was similar, but I learned quickly that it was not for me. So I'm glad I switched. You mentioned something I wanted to ask you about, which was you said that when you did the program, it had profound changes on the quality of your life. I'm just curious if you could share some of those things with us. So what was it that made you so excited about the results you were seeing?
I started looking around for how to get strong because I was trying to get my toddler daughter into a shopping cart, and I almost dropped her.
Mm.
And I was thinking, I have very light children. So like at 1 year, my children were under 20 pounds, right? So like some kids have like 30-pound 4-month-olds. So I knew I objectively had light kids, and I was still struggling with like an activity of daily life. And, as a mom, the idea of dropping your kid on asphalt in a parking lot is pretty horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
So, the internet, how to get strong, starting strength comes up. I read all the forum stuff. The website, sorry guys, was really lame at that time. So I bought the book. I read the book, and
is it better now though?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, good,
Yes,
all right.
yes.
Okay.
I remember on the forums when someone was like, "You guys got to like fix this website. This is ridiculous."
Yeah.
And it was nice to see that evolution.
I'm glad you like it now. Steph works her ass off on that site.
Yeah,
Speaking of being a
yeah. I mean,
self-taught
it
programmer,
makes
she's basically a software engineer that just picks stuff up and is the system administrator for all things starting strength, So
yeah. I like that way of living. Of like, there's a problem and I need to solve it. So
uh-huh.
how do I do that? And although that requires like time and interest. So like I was really upset at how much it cost to buy a bunk bed. So I learned how to build one.
Hell yeah.
So the wood was cheaper, but the time was expensive. But it was fine because I was having a good time.
Sure. And then you learn a skill that'll pay dividends later.
Yeah. So and it hasn't fallen down. My kids are perfectly secure in it. But anyways, back to so I read the blue book, and it made sense. I guess I have an affinity for textbooks or something. I was in school for a very long time. So and I'm really fortunate because I had no background and I hadn't read anything else, and I hadn't tried curls and I hadn't tried machines before. It was, this was the first thing I encountered, and it worked. So I read through the end. I got to the programming chapter, and it said, here's workout A and here's workout B, and you're going to add 5 pounds every time. And I remember very quickly being like, this is crazy. Probably 95 pounds was crazy squat weight. Maybe it's the way that Ripito wrote the book. I was like, well, he seems like he knows what he's doing, and I'm just going to trust this process that says I can add 5 pounds. So I kept doing that. I remember the first time I deadlifted my own body weight. That was beyond my wildest imaginations of being able to do that. So I wasn't afraid to pick up my children anymore. I think my body shape changed, but the real thing was like I was heavier than I'd ever been as an adult.
Mm.
And that sort of mentally was really hard to deal with. Like, oh my gosh, I'm like 20 pounds heavier than I ever been. It was probably like a 10-pound weight gain, but in my mind, my normal adult weight was like 140. I was postpartum, probably around 150, and I got up toward 160.
At what height?
But I 5'4".
5'4", okay.
And I didn't care. I was like, I have a body that can do things. I'm not afraid of falling down the stairs with my laundry basket, which was one of my, whether true or not, it's a little hard to realize or to come to grips with like 10 years later, because now I've been substantially stronger for 10 years. But back then, like when I think about it, I was afraid to grab the laundry basket from upstairs and bring it downstairs because I was afraid I was going to fall.
Yeah. And are you cruising
whether
around
that
160
actually would have happened
pounds right now, body weight?
No, I actually haven't weighed myself, but like 160 would be a great weight. I'm probably heavier than that because I'm still nursing. I've again, sort of like mentally, like I'm not getting on the scale. When I'm done nursing, we'll like figure this out. Because otherwise, I'm just going to diet down to 160. I was talking to Ina Koppel. I was like, I feel like I need to like lose weight. I'm ready for this baby weight to come off. And she was very gracious about it. She was like, in my experience, as soon as I lost weight, nursing became more difficult.
Yeah, you
And so
can't
I was
lose weight
like,
when you're nursing, right?
I mean, you probably can, but you probably shouldn't like go on a cut.
Sure, sure.
Right? That
Yeah,
shouldn't be
I
your
phrased that incorrectly. You
purpose.
can, but that may not be ideal. I know my wife is nursing at the moment. We're 7 weeks in, and she's about 14 pounds above her pre-birth weight. And luckily, her
Right.
attitude about it is good. Like, hey, I've got to carry this extra body fat because I've got to feed this baby. You know,
Right.
I do want to talk about this topic for a minute, just sidetrack briefly, because I know that one of the biggest challenges we have with women, let's just say, and feel free to correct any of my assertions here if you disagree, because you have more experience with this. You see more members than I do, because your gym is full with the waiting list, and the gym that I coach at is not quite as full. But in my experience, premenopausal women, the younger they are, the more pronounced this is, really struggle with the psychological aspect of body weight, and it's a huge deterrent. So deterrent number one is getting into the gym is intimidating.
Yes.
Deterrent number two is strength training is kind of a guy's thing because I don't want to be big and muscular. And then as
Absolutely.
a kind of a subset of deterrent number two, it's almost like, well, and that means I don't want to be big. I don't want to be heavy. So
Mhm.
can you share your perspective on that as a woman, as someone who's done the program, who's gained weight, how you square that, how you feel about your body image, and how you handle that with your members?
Um, so how I handle my own body image is it's actually interesting right now because I'm can actually my infant is old enough that I can actually see the light at the end of the tunnel for nursing. And so it's good. There's this transition time. And what I'm thinking about is so I'm in the fitness industry and people have these expectations for what a personal trainer looks like. Um, do I want to conform to that mold? Or I really enjoy my mom bod, which is a little thicker than the personal trainer model, and part of me has always enjoyed what I call stealth strength, where like people don't look at me and think she's strong until I like pick up a folding table. And I had this woman say, man, that must be a really light folding table. And so she went to pick it up and she was like, no, no, it's like the normal weight at the folding
Yeah,
table to be.
I just make it look light.
Uh, yeah. So that's my current thinking is like my profession versus my preference.
Yeah,
But in terms of women and their weight, I I don't have a good answer to that because people do have such varying tolerances for their understanding of themselves. So for me, I'm a very pragmatic person. So being able to do more and live in my own body better was so motivating that I got over the weight gain. But one thing that's nice about starting Strength Austin, I would say the last time I looked, we were about a third women,
mm,
which means that we have, so obviously on average, a third of the members in our classes are women, but we have some where maybe even half. Occasionally, we've had more than half of a class are women. And one of the nice things that I've seen is for them to talk to one another about their weight gain. Usually it's like I don't fit my pants because my booty has gotten bigger, which that's really fun until they start complaining about needing to buy new jeans.
sure.
Um,
And by the way,
then
when
you're
they
trying,
complain about the booty growing, they usually also say that their waist has gotten smaller, even though they've gained weight, right? if you want the fitness model bod, uh, believe it or not, starting strength is the best bang for your buck. Like, have you seen Amanda
Yeah.
Shipley? Another
Oh, yeah.
example is my wife. If you want to get strong and muscular and have that underlying shape, right? Because what's body composition? You've got, what are the things that make you have a certain look? You've got your skeleton, you've got fat, and you've got muscle. So your skeleton kind of gives your body the base shape that it's always going to have. There's no change in that. And then muscle, especially on a woman, provides a lot of the shape and the curve. And then fat adds to that. It can detract from that if it becomes too much. But how do you optimize body composition? Well, you get as much muscle as possible. And for women, that ends up, like women deposit fat and muscle more behind the femur than in front of the femur as compared to men, just hormonally, for example. And if you want to have that super lean, muscular, shapely bod, you can do that with starting strength. But I do find that a lot of people have trouble with the nutrition side of things, which is why we launched our nutrition coaching. And that was available at Starting Strength Austin first. So it's like, okay, you want to get stronger, but you also want to look good. How do you do that? And the answer is making sure your total caloric intake is where it needs to be, like a slight surplus, so you can gain lean body mass, but without putting on too much fat, and making sure your macros are dialed in, especially protein, as high as possible. And this happens with both men and women, especially men that kind of misunderstand the advice on Rip's podcast and from the book, where if you've got a 45-year-old guy, and to get your 200 grams of protein or 250 grams of protein, you're eating, 4 cheeseburgers a day or whatever. Like, you may not be too happy with the type of weight that you gain. So I do find it interesting, but I also, I don't think we'll ever be, I don't ever think we're going to kind of lean into the marketing on the aesthetic side of things. It's just not really who we are, even though I think we do it better than others, and having a strong base of muscle is important to aesthetics. But I do think we will lean into the function thing for sure, because you're still a young woman, and women much older than you certainly seem to have the practical point of view as well. And everyone has their own level of vanity, which varies as you go through different stages of your life. But there are lots of older gals at the Boise gym who their primary motivation was not vanity. When they came into the gym, their primary motivation was, I need to improve my function. I need to make sure I don't fall down when I'm walking from my car to the house. I need to make sure when I go see my MD that my blood report shows that I'm not pre-diabetic. This type of stuff. And then typically I find if gals like that will follow the advice of, hey, improve your protein intake, but also keep your diet clean, like eat like an adult, but just more protein. Yeah. That's typically when we see the booty growing, but the waist shrinking. And just one more point on that. So another misconception or another problem that we have overcoming is the actual number on the scale. Because one thing that I have trouble explaining to people who are new to the idea of adding muscle, especially women, is that your body weight can go up while your body fat percentage goes down. So you can gain weight and be leaner.
Extreme story. We had a woman gain 20 pounds and her clothes fit better.
Right.
Like that. I always caveat that with, that's not normal. But she was also an athlete. She was phenomenal herself, but it is completely possible.
Sure.
To gain weight and have your clothes fit better. And that's one of my encouragement to women is like, find, instead of the scale weight, find something you want to fit in, and, just periodically try it on, because that's actually what you care about, right? Is looking good in your clothes. We just tend to use, like, in our minds, we think the scale weight is going to express that.
Sure.
But actually, we'd like to not muffin top over our jeans, right?
Indeed.
Actually, we'd like to not have fat rolls under our tank tops. So,
which is always a problem in the kitchen, not in the weight room.
Yes. And that's tricky as a coach, is to realize how much we don't have control over. Mm-hmm. So there's one part that's like, I'd like you to improve your sleep and your eating to improve your recovery. And then eventually, after you've given that advice or tried some nudging, you realize you just have to treat that person for the recovery that they can have.
Mm-hmm.
And frequently that means they make smaller jumps in the weight on the bar. They need programming that adds weight to the bar, like on a weekly cycle or bi-weekly if it's really tough, like every 3 or 4 weeks. And that's just the reality of, varying people where they're vegans and they, are working a stressful job and they don't sleep. So then we program them like an advanced lifter.
Sure. Yeah, because you're not making progress 3 times a week with that kind of nutrition and sleep.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a gal at the Boise gym at the moment who is pretty typical. She looks great. She's thin. She's strong, getting stronger, but the progress is pretty slow going because she has been convinced by popular diet culture that carbohydrates are the devil. And so I'm trying to remove the emotional view of what carbs are and how they should be judged, and just kind of bring it back to the practical. And just to share with you all,
Yeah.
Strength training is an anaerobic activity. So you need readily accessible fuel in order to provide the energy required to do that 60-second set of 5 under the bar on your squat, right? So you need readily available energy. You need readily available sugar, and eating carbohydrates is useful for that. I mean, yeah, you can be fat adapted and do the long, slow distance aerobic stuff all you want, but if you're doing anaerobic work, carbohydrates are the fuel for that. So, okay, I know carbs aren't your thing and you've been using them to maintain a body type that you prefer, but I do need you to try to eat some carbs before and or after and or during your workout at minimum, just so you don't start getting pale on the platform, and so you can actually put up the weight and progress and then get stronger. And then other than just having the energy to perform the workout, just so everyone knows, the other argument is in favor of recovery.
That's where I feel like we have to um, uh, be a little more careful about the carb thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also tricky because I have found that our lifters who are pre-diabetic or diabetic, probably they've self-selected as members of our gym. They care, like they care about what they eat. They're paying attention, and they do tend to eat very few carbs.
Mm-hmm.
I have one that is keto, thinking about carnivore.
Mm-hmm.
So, uh, uh, yeah, I feel like that's a different category from someone who is not diabetic choosing a low carb diet,
Mm.
and I haven't quite figured out how to coach that yet.
Yeah, it's tough.
So,
It's changing someone's beliefs, which is difficult. But typically, if you can show performance, if you can show improvement in an area that's important to the person, that might open up their mind. And
although at the same time,
go ahead.
I feel that one thing I've appreciated about the women with, I'm just going to call them interesting diets, is that none of them have asked me why the weight on the bar doesn't go up faster. Like they are content with what I program for them. And so starting strength done, doing actually the programming, eating what we consider to be sensibly efficient, effective progress weight on the bar. So then you take the diet part and you make it very suboptimal. As a coach, it's frustrating when I have young men who won't eat and then are frustrated that the weight on the bar doesn't go up. I'm sort of like, can't help you there.
Yeah.
But for the women, they have this attitude of, I want to get stronger and I'm willing to do this slower. And so that part as a coach, I appreciate. So there's the nudge along, like, here are the benefits. And usually they're maybe around the holidays or on a vacation, they realize, oh, I ate more and I feel so much better now that I'm back. So like you start to make those connections. But at the same time, there's this sort of give and take of, fine, you're going to have a suboptimal diet. And as long as you accept that we're going to make strength gains slower, we're on the same page. Like, being on the same page is great. It's the young men where I'm like, I kind of want to throttle you. Like, if you're going to like lose weight over Christmas, come back and say, why is the weight on the bar so light? It's like, you went home and lost weight over Christmas. Like, who even does that? Do you hate your mother? Like, I don't know.
I hope these are the questions you ask in the gym. Yeah.
I might sometimes do that. Yes.
So tell me about your average member in Austin. What's the archetype over there? What are they like? What are they in the gym for? What type of results do they see? Because you guys are pretty full. I think you've got a waiting list, don't you?
Yeah, we are pretty full. So again, these numbers may have changed. About a third women. I think we had like 10 to 15% of them are over 65. My class, I have two 69-year-olds, a 72-year-old, a woman in her 50s, a couple 40-something-year-olds. I probably have more of the older people than the other classes, but maybe on paper we have younger people, but I feel, and that's probably because we have tech workers who can afford it exactly. in their 20s and 30s. But by and large, when I've been doing intros, I've been sitting for 2 years during COVID, and I realized that's a bad idea. So here I am.
And your gym isn't young. So, it's maybe 5 years younger on average than another gym, but still younger.
Right. So I would say maybe late 30s, mid 40s male is a pretty common, would be a pretty common lifter for us.
And if I come into the gym and I walk around the room and look at these guys moving weights around, what sort of numbers are they putting up? Just, average run of the mill type numbers on any given day?
Okay, I'm going to caveat this with, we have the first gym, which means we have run out of the low-hanging fruit of people who already know starting strength. So we are pretty happy if we get a guy to like a 315 squat and like 365 deadlift.
Coming from where?
I realize.
Like starting where?
Oh, probably coming from like 135 on a squat, because or even less, sometimes like 95, 115. Because again, 2 years, COVID, sitting in a chair. Tech workers, so they're not like world beating athletes. Like, I think we had one guy briefly who was like a scholarshiped football athlete, and it was mind-blowing. It's like, we never interact with people like this.
Right. So, guys that actually can learn the movements the first time you show it to them, and are at 20 pounds per workout for a couple of workouts and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah. At the same time, I find that most of them are teachable. They want to get better. And so, low back control might be something that they really don't get. They've never thought about their low back. And, but it's something that over time improves. And it's wonderful to be able to tell them that. It's like, your lifts today were better than last time. And for all you other apprentice coaches, when you get to the platform exam, you're working with people who have paid money to do the starting strength seminar, and there's a little bit of buy-in on being yelled at and moving properly. In the starting strength gym, what I've seen is we have people who want to get strong, and they're entrusting themselves to us for it, but they have no idea.
Hmm.
Like they are not barbell people. It's very rare for me to encounter someone who has done any barbell lifting, and if they have, they've bench pressed.
I think
So
that's great.
I know Rip talks about people have an image of the squat. I'm like, not my people. It's not about upright. It's not about horizontal. It's like, you want me to do, they cannot even picture. So it's good that we have icons on the wall. It's like, okay, that like they have a thing. Oh, okay, there's going to be this bar on your back and you're going to go down and then you're going to stand up. Uh, the other thing I try and tell apprentices is use fewer words, because by the time you're done teaching them the press, they're overwhelmed. Like probably halfway into the press, they're on information overload because they don't have any mental schema for squatting. They don't have any mental schema for low back control. They haven't had to manage balance at that position. We're asking a lot of them. And to me, that's a reason to be more concise with your instruction. Just be kind to them.
Yeah. If you see the eyes glossing over, then maybe leave out the hip bounce for the next session. You can just teach a strict press on session 1, that kind of stuff.
Well, also nervous new apprentices like to say, I want you to do this because of that. And then we're going to like they talk in paragraphs. And they're really polite. So my advice is like, you've got to kind of feel like an asshole. Like you'll feel like you're so short with them that you haven't added anything polite in there, and you're doing them a service to do that.
That's what they're paying for. You need to cue them, not lecture them.
There's that, but also just respecting their cognitive capacity to process stuff.
That's a good way to put it.
And that's in the intro, not just when they're under the bar. Like when you're talking about 3 things to notice here, your back is more horizontal, your knees are tracking with your toes, you're at depth.
Yep.
So
keep it simple. So let's go back to your story. What were your numbers when you started, and what are your PRs?
I actually looked this up. My squat was 45. My press was the 15-pound bar. So they didn't have a 35-pound bar. So my bench, I think I didn't think to load the 15-pound bar. So I think I benched 45 and felt really scared, and that was too heavy a weight. And I deadlifted 95. And my PRs are a 255 on the squat, 102.5 on the press, 126 on the bench, and 305 on the deadlift.
Nice. You're pretty close to getting your sticker.
Well, okay, that's true. The sticker. Yeah. Yes, maybe the sticker. We'll see. In the meantime, in those 10 years, I've had 3 surgeries. So I am very well versed with novice linear progression.
I've been through a few bouts myself.
So yeah.
So you mentioned that your goal was to get stronger. So hit us with the conclusion. Did you achieve your goal? What were things like post getting stronger versus before getting stronger? Walk us through these quality of life changes that you mentioned.
So quality of life change, not being afraid to move the laundry basket, not being afraid to pick up my kids, generally being more confident in life. Like I can take care of myself. I can do things that are hard. I remember the first time I was on a cut and getting under the bar for the squat, which I already hate. I have anthropometry that's not squat friendly. And telling myself you are stronger than you think you are. And that I think is generally a good thing to believe about yourself. It's a generally good thing to experience. I feel like I've had as much improvement in sort of my mental and spiritual life from lifting as I have from, um, just being able to produce force against objects.
And is that a confidence thing primarily, or is there something else that you are referring to?
Um, for the mental health side, I would say it's doing things even when they're tough.
Mm.
Um, there's been a lot of just life tough things in the past 10 years because life,
Yeah,
right?
that's life. Yeah.
I mean, if you're the lucky person who has never experienced hardship or doesn't on a regular basis, fantastic. But my family has had like some serious ups and downs. And being able to remember I do hard things
Mm.
is really helpful. I am not going to be crushed by this emotional weight that I am under. That I don't think I had before. Definitely when I had my first child, I think it's flipped a switch, some sort of switch of like, you are weak and frail now. You don't know what you're doing, and you need help. Uh, and I don't think that anymore. So I have tweens and then I have this infant now, and it's a totally different, well, fine, I'm 10 years older, but it's a very different parenting experience. I don't feel frail. When I'm exhausted at 4 a.m, like I was those first months, it's like, this is temporary. Like, am I miserable? Yes, I am totally miserably underslept, but it'll be okay. So some of that is I've done it twice before.
Mm.
I've gotten 2 kids out of toddlerhood. They didn't die despite my ignorance. But some of it also is that regular practice of dreading the squat and like doing it anyways and being miserable and like standing up and then be like, oh, thank God it's over.
Tell me about pregnancy as someone who's strong versus can you compare the two experiences? So pregnancy with your twins before strength training versus this latest pregnancy after already having been strong.
Sort of. The problem is they're 10 years
Yeah.
apart. I remember that I was in a lot more pain for the first 2 pregnancies. I had, before I was lifting at 26, I had hip surgery. So like the hips have never been normal. Well, they weren't normal before, or definitely after surgery, they're not great. And so I experienced a lot of low back pain with those first pregnancies. And this time I was telling someone I'm in really good shape. So did eventually things feel wonky? Sure, but not at like week 10 and 12, like week 30 something.
And what does wonky mean?
I think also my SI joint tends to lock up and be irritated. I have to be very careful in the squat to make sure my knees are out, or else my hip flexors on the right side get really upset. Interestingly, I was having some hip flexor pain, went to an ortho, and he actually did an MRI, and he said, I could go in there and do something, but there's no guarantee. Why don't we just wait until you have a hip replacement? I was like, sure, that sounds fine.
So you're saying that
if I knew what I knew now, I wouldn't have gotten the surgery at 26.
Right. Yeah. But comparing one pregnancy to the other, you're saying that 10 years later, your latest, oldest age pregnancy is the one where your body felt better for longer.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's pretty cool. What about?
I'm really happy. I'm really happy about that.
Hell yeah, yeah, it's a big deal. Some women, we've had a baby. A bunch of our friends are having kids. So I'm seeing the different experiences between women, and it varies wildly. And I know that Kathy
Yes.
had a fairly pleasant experience overall, and I'm quite confident that's due to the fact that she's healthy and strong, and Um, she's dealing with this whole trying to adjust to having a higher body weight too. When we first met, she was like 124 pounds, 126 pounds, something like that. And now she's in the 140s postpartum. She was in the 130s right before she got pregnant. And since she has a strong base of muscle, she's got great shape and she can carry the weight and she looks awesome and she feels good. And she's healthy and the baby's healthy. I know that a lot of that is
that's really
strength. Yeah. Can you also talk to me about postpartum? Talk to me about what has been different for you postpartum being strong versus not.
This is me just being opinionated. I was able to have like normal unmedicated vaginal deliveries for the first two, but we had a medical situation where I had to have a C-section for this most recent pregnancy. And I'm going to say to the world, ladies, don't volunteer for the C-section. It's so hard to recover from.
You mean abdominal surgery? You don't think just going
straight
to
like cutting
surgery?
through multiple layers of self.
It's like 40+% of all childbirth in Brazil is C-section at this point. Yeah.
I read about that. Yeah. And I wonder if it's because they don't know the options. Like, fine, I was 10 years younger, but recovering that was a lot better. So to say recovering from a C-section, it's the only one I've had. It was difficult. I hired a coach with progressive rehab and strength who works with pelvic floor issues as a barbell coach. I think I started around week 11 to get back under the bar, and I didn't know my body. I was like, where's depth on the squat? Like, I would think I got there, look at the video and be like, nope, not there. Controlling
11
my
weeks
low back.
After giving birth?
Yeah. Low back, didn't necessarily know what it was doing. It's a big deal to cut through all those layers and recover from it. And I have no metric for knowing whether an earlier C-section would have been more difficult or not.
Interesting.
But,
yeah, Kathy's thinking about getting back under the bar. And I know her hip anatomy's changed. Her, femoral angles have changed. The relaxin hormone towards the end of pregnancy is interesting. I'm not sure what effect that has postpartum, if ligaments are actually looser or if things kind of tighten back up.
Yeah.
Something worth researching. But yeah, she's looking forward to getting back under the bar. And she's in no rush, though, because she needs those calories.
Yeah.
She's breastfeeding. Actually, last thing I want to ask you about, unless there's anything else you want to talk about, is what was your what was it like for you during pregnancy? Because I talked to Shelly Wells, who's another one of these like fitness model type gals in the starting strength community. And she was saying that she struggled with these expectations of being this, pregnant, fit lady like on Instagram. And that was tough for her to deal with. And Kathy had a similar situation where she kind of felt like, to be a strength trainee, to be a fit woman, she's got to train all the way through pregnancy and, be under the bar with a big belly and all this stuff. And I'm glad that she didn't beat herself up too much, because she can be hard on herself like we all can be. And she actually just kind of stopped training almost immediately just because she wasn't feeling great, and did kind of minimal activity, roller skated for the first trimester and then didn't do much other than walk. And the fact that she had such a strong strength base made it so that she's prepared for being sedentary for, better part of a year, if not more. So I'm just curious if you struggle with that at all. What's your take on it? How do you advise your clients?
So I'm actually, this reminds me, I need to finish the article I want to submit to RIP about lifting in a high risk pregnancy. So I also wanted to set PRs, like while pregnant, because isn't that cool? And then we found out that there was a low-lying placenta, and basically it covers the birth canal. And that's really, really dangerous, right? Like, that's how you get like Victorian bloodbaths in order for the baby to be born, and it has to break through the placenta.
Wow.
terrible, terrible um, situation. And so thought I had a very reasonable maternal fetal medicine doctor. We talked about, hey, the issue is intra-abdominal pressure. We don't want it to rise so high that we might rupture blood vessels in the placenta. I felt like we had like a conversation that I could understand, because the restrictions this is called placenta previa. The restrictions when you have placenta previa are really intense. They don't want you, I mean, I understand you can really put the baby at risk if you start bleeding and they can't get it to stop. They will deliver the baby.
Yeah.
For very good reason.
Yeah.
So then the question was, so what does lifting look like in that situation, and modifying things along the way. And so that quickly killed I want to get my 315 deadlift by the end of the year. So that goal went.
Priorities.
The wise Ina Koppel again was like, the baby is the PR.
Nice.
That's good. Nice. Good. Yeah. The baby is the PR.
I wonder if there's anyone
like
in the
walk
world
you off the cliff
with more experience with starting strength in pregnancy than Ina, with the amount of pregnant women in her gym over all those years, so she's the one to ask.
Yeah. She's the fairy godmother of training while pregnant.
Yep.
So the mindset had to change. And then as a coach, it was really interesting to think of, well, what is lifting like when you don't want to raise intra-abdominal pressure excessively, or whatever, in heavy. A way that would endanger.
That's what it is.
Yeah. So it's not heavy. Probably the first thing I took out was the squat. You have relaxin. There's a lot of downward pressure. So eventually everything I did was supported. So lat pull downs. So I was sitting on a bench. I bench pressed. So those are, and then eventually I started swimming just because I needed something to help get the weight. I was like, yes, water will give me some buoyancy. So that's where I ended up. So it was an interesting thought experience. It was probably a good mental health check of like, really, don't beat yourself up on who you have to be during pregnancy. It's not about the outside world. It's about your family.
Yeah. It's about protecting this potential for life, which makes you reshape all your priorities, doesn't it? How do we attract more people like you to the apprenticeship program? Because I think if we had someone like you in each of our gyms, we would break the fitness mold better, and we'd be able to appeal to average people better. And because as you can tell, the way that I'm trying to communicate the value of this thing to the public is, I'm not selling image, I'm not selling sex, I'm just selling functionality, logic, and efficacy, essentially. And someone like you, who's just, totally clear, totally sober, fairly objective, this just has discovered this thing because it is useful and it improves quality of life, and you want to share with others. Former teacher, middle age, career change type thing. Like it's a unique situation. How do we attract more people like you?
One, I was like, all the excuses for why this wouldn't be replicable. I'm a unique snowflake. But my guess it's actually going to be similar. You're going to fish in the pool of your members.
I think you're right.
Because they're going to understand, they have that like, oh, this changed my life. And also because there'll be that relationship between the coach and that lifter, where the lifter can approach the coach and say, hey, I'm thinking about that. Or the coach can see, knows that family, knows that lifter well enough to say, hey, I think this might be a good fit for you, because they know enough of the context of that person's life.
Well, if anyone out there is listening and you are or know a wise, strong mother who's bought into this, that might be a good fit. I know that may not be a thought that you had in the past, of like, oh, maybe I should become a coach at a starting strength gym, but I just want to let you all know that I think it's a great fit. So if you're interested, get
Yeah.
in touch with Ina. What'd you call her? The Oracle, or what's her?
I think the fairy
The fairy
godmother.
godmother? Yeah. Where can people find you online?
The easiest is amates at ssgyms.com. I have Instagram, Andrea Mates underscore SSC. And
Mates.
yes, Mates.
Yeah.
It's as boring as it sounds.
Very good. Well, I appreciate your time today, Andrea, and thanks very much for setting a good example for our lifters and for other coaches and for holding things down over there in Austin. The gym is kicking ass, and I hear nothing but positive things. So thank you very much.
Well, come over and visit. We've got barbecue for you when you get here.
That's probably the thing I'm most motivated by.
Let's see.
So I'll bring Lily by sometime and we'll hang out.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
All right. Thanks, Andrea.
See ya.
See ya.